So today we have the pleasure of being joined by both Annie Horneland and Tyler Morgan. Annie, a solutions architect here at Bonterra, has been with us since 2022. And before she entered into CSR software, she worked in financial technology, payroll, banking, and cancer research commercialization. Annie currently lives in Minneapolis with her wife, Abby, and their daughter, Lucy. And Tyler, a product marketing and strategy director, has been with Bonterra since 2024. And before entering in the social good technology space, Tyler worked in various roles in B2B product marketing across a number of different industries. And he currently lives in Charleston, South Carolina with his husband. So, with that, folks, we're in for a great session. We are in for a treat with two of the best. And I'll go ahead and pass it to you, Tyler, to go ahead and get us kicked off here.
All righty. Thank you so much, Ashley, and hello to everyone. As Ashley mentioned, my name is Tyler Morgan. I am calling in from Charleston, South Carolina. Unfortunately, it's not as sunny as it usually is. The weather is pretty rainy today. But thank you also so much for joining. I have been with Bonterra for a little over a year now. And I'm excited to dive into something today that is not typically touched on within the CSR realm, which is capacity building. And this is truly representative of going beyond the grant. And what is capacity building, right? So it is essentially the equivalent of teaching a man to fish instead of giving him a fish. It's going beyond traditional programmatic support. So beyond just giving the dollars, right? This is helping to enhance nonprofits and help them elevate their ability to serve their communities. And this can take several different forms. This can look like live personalized coaching. This can be providing them with fundraising technology. This can be providing them with cohort-based workshops to really elevate their presence. But essentially, it's helping them become better at serving their communities to service more people to create a larger impact. Next slide, please, Annie. So now that we've established what capacity building is, let's talk about why it's important. It can really help reduce your nonprofit partners' reliance on grants and also increase your philanthropic ROI. If you look at robust programs like Jumpstart, which Bonterra offers, there are several key statistics that I want to highlight that can really elevate or showcase the kind of impact that capacity building can have, right? So for instance, funders for Jumpstart get a 10x philanthropic ROI. So for every dollar that they invest into the program, their participants, the nonprofit partners that they sponsor, raise $10 in fundraising from individual giving. They tend to quadruple their donations for participants, almost quadruple the number of donors that they have. And in addition to that, for every hour of coaching, they get a 25% increase in net new funds raised per hour. And so this is really, really elevated work, right? We're helping them increase their capacity, service their communities more, and going beyond the grant to help them really create this impact. And you can see on the left here a quote for programs like Jumpstart, how they can provide a mountain of opportunities that simply wouldn't be available to folks doing really transformative work in their communities. Next slide, please, Annie. All right, and so why is this timely, right? Fundraising is now more crucial than ever for nonprofit partners' survival, right? Given the volatility in grant funding environments that we're seeing in today's landscape, it's more important than ever to help them become self-sufficient. And we notice significant gaps when we talk about BIPOC-led organizations. So if we look at the broader environment for fundraising and for general nonprofit revenue, for large, very stable nonprofits, almost 70% of their revenue comes from fundraising. If we look at small or growing nonprofits, this ratio changes drastically, right? Almost 100% of their funding comes from grants. And this is really, really concerning because it makes them really vulnerable to changes in the landscape, as you can see from today. And so this ratio gets even worse for BIPOC-led nonprofits, where only 2% of their revenue comes from fundraising. And so you can see that there's a large discrepancy in stability when it comes to fundraising versus grant revenue. And this is a large reason why 1 out of 3 nonprofits fail within their first 5 years. Next slide, Annie. So let's talk about some capacity building approaches, right? And there are a couple of different types. And the first is operational grants. But these aren't tech-enabled. They don't provide group-based learning, and they don't provide personalized coaching, okay? And the second option would be consulting. So hiring out third-party consultants to come in and helping out your nonprofit partners in order to elevate their capacity. These do sometimes have a group-based learning component, but they aren't tech-enabled, and they usually don't have personalized coaching. The third option is training programs. So you can think like Resilia or Catch a Fire. And these, while they are tech enabled and they do have group based learning, they don't have a personalized coaching component, which is extremely key in helping nonprofits elevate their capacity in order to serve more people in their communities. And you can see this quote here at the bottom from Ed Smith Lewis, who's the VP of Strategic Partnerships at UNCF. And he puts it really, really well in that what they're saying they could really use is help getting off the hamster wheel so they don't have to ask for more funding next year too. So what does this leave us with? Next slide, Annie. Holistic capacity building. We want all three of those components that we mentioned in the previous slide. We want technology, we want group learning, and we want personalized coaching, because when all of those are combined, then nonprofits can raise 25% more funds. And this is where this data-driven impact comes in. We want to tell a data-driven story with holistic capacity building in order to go beyond the grant and help nonprofit partners really elevate not only their fundraising success, but their impact within their community. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about data-driven storytelling as I switch it over to Annie.
I don't know why, but it always takes me a small century to find my mute button. So, hello, I'm Annie. I'm a solutions architect here. So I have the privilege of working with a lot of our corporate and corporate foundation clients, some others, of course, nonprofits and private foundations, community foundations as well. But I think this is probably most relevant for our corporate and corporate foundation clients, what I'm about to say. I will first start by saying it's hard to follow up capacity building because really that's kind of like dream state, right? Like we would love to do stuff like that. I think what I usually hear from our clients is like it's usually comes down to like budget capacity and what needs they're trying to fulfill, what needs they're allowed to fulfill. And so like I think the using data is a good use case to uh, make it more likely that you could pursue capacity building planning with your strategic partners. I think that would be a really cool path forward. But what I'm addressing is more of the everyday tactical aspects of driving impact. So going forward, what we're going to be looking at is the impact trifecta. So I'll talk a little bit more, but basically what I hear people saying is like there's many factors that affect their ability to collect data, to report on data, to really figure out exactly where they want to zero in and drive that impact. So from what I have seen, these three factors usually come into play. Business alignment, whether we like it or not in this line of business, is very important. And sometimes people give me the frowny face about that, but I think it's highly relevant. So with business alignment, as you're doing your granting, the goal is perhaps this bottom left, doing good by funding meaningful programs, whether that's pro bono services, dollars, or products. That's what we're here to do. The reason the business alignment is important with that is because honestly, it helps us to, one, provide goodwill in our branding, which is important for business continuation and to align with customer mindset, stakeholder mindset. It's also really relevant because honestly, like we don't really control how much funding we get. And so all we can do is ask to get additional funding. But in order to get additional funding, as anyone who's worked in a bureaucratic environment knows, you have to make a business case. And the best way to do that is making sure that your corporate granting strategy is business aligned. And then finally, storytelling. You need to champion your proof of value. So while we all want to focus on just doing good, the how you're doing good and the how you're sharing it is also important because some companies would prefer to make it anonymous. And that's cool. I love that sense of altruism. Most of us do not have the ability to do that. Most of our programs are structured in a way where they have a marketing component to them. So it's important to remember that storytelling is still important. So anyway, I digress. Here's what I always say to clients. whenever we're talking through impact building strategies, trying to figure out how they want to zero in, like exactly what they're trying to do, right? There's a lot of factors to consider. So, as with any large scale problem, I always recommend starting at the end. So, we're thinking about what we have, maybe our corporate values, we have our granting focus area strategies. We might have certain featured partners that we would like to have long-term strategic relationships with to accomplish certain things. There's a lot of components within a grant program, but specifically in terms of driving greater impact, I think it's important to keep those things in mind and then think about the results you want. What is the story you would ideally like to share, and how can that be represented by various data points? What kind of visualizations would really drive it home that you are doing X, Y, and Z, whatever that might be? And then considering what I have lovingly dubbed the 3 Ws, you want to know your why you're doing it, your who you're doing it for, and what it's going to take to get your who and your why addressed. And that becomes your how. So I always recommend with impact strategies that people start by defining their goals. So I went over this a little bit at the beginning, but I think it's always relevant to keep this top of mind. If you don't know your why, then you're not going to get there. Just if you don't set a goal, you're never going to reach it because you've never defined it, you know? So why are you doing it? We would love it if it was altruistic. I think there's always a component of that, but there's more to it than that. It's not black and white. There's also going to be maximizing impact in certain areas. So some of our clients have a specific focus on education. Even within that, they might be focusing on literacy or STEM education. Some of our clients will focus on things like housing, homelessness, addiction. There's various things that you're going to focus on. And again, nodding back to business alignment, those are usually influenced by what your business does as a service or provides as a product, the population of your customers, or even just where you're geographically located. There's a lot of factors that go into determining what those impact areas are going to be. But you probably already know those. The other whys are you might want to inform yourself for future funding decisions. So you might want to be collecting data so that you understand whether or not that program type, that organization, or whatever it might be is something you want to continue funding in the future. You'll consider your brand's elevation through funding different causes, different types of organizations, different locales. You might be required to provide proof of value to leadership. I almost used the term ROI, but like that seems a little icky because like really what you're doing is telling them that the funds you've been allocated have been used in an effective way to drive what you have agreed upon to be your collective impact areas. And then also many of our clients, for better or for worse, have government reporting requirements, such as the Community Reinvestment Act, or if you work in manufacturing, you might have certain environmental regulations you need to follow. Honestly, the opportunities for government required reporting regulations are endless. So if you have them, you know about it, you know who you are. So now we're getting to the who. So we know our why. What are we trying to accomplish with our data? Like, what's the use case for having data in the first place? And then we're going to figure out, okay, who? Maybe the why and the who are interchangeable. I like doing why first. The who is going to be who benefits from seeing this data? Like, who are you actually going to be sharing it with? Is it just your leadership team? Are you going to keep it for yourself? Are you going to share it with your marketing team because they use it to build an annual report? Is it going to be, oh, I think I actually, oh, sorry, I have a couple extra bullets on there from my copying that I didn't get rid of, so that's my bad. But essentially, you're just trying to think of who's benefiting from this information. Are you sharing it on your website so that anyone can look it up? Even with that, are you only sharing certain things? Are you giving people a full transparent data dump? Like, there's a lot of factors of that, but figuring out who's going to ultimately see it and back to what's important for those people to see to get you to your why. So that's your what. So you're thinking about okay, now that I know who's going to see this and why we're doing it, so what we're trying to accomplish, I need to know what's the data I actually need to collect to accomplish my vision. So we're really working backwards from saying, imagining the reports we would like to have, or the storytelling elements we would like to collect, and then working backwards. So now we're at the what. If I know that I want to have quotes, I'm going to ask for them. That's a data point I can collect. If I know I want pictures, cool. Now I can ask for them. If I want to collect metrics on demographic breakdown, because that's important because we're trying to serve some certain population, great. That's awesome. Now we know that. So we're thinking about which data points are actually going to be meaningful measurements for us, or as I also wrote out here, maybe just an indicator of success for that program. Maybe success isn't how you want to define it. It's variable. And then I always recommend maintaining a human element. Like, I think a lot of us really get siloed, we get in our zone, we get in our bubble, and we tend not to leave it. And I think it's really important in our industry to keep lines of conversation open and stay curious. So in this case, when you're collecting, figuring out what data collect, go talk to nonprofits. If you're here right now, it's more than likely you already have at least a few strategic partners that you continuously fund. Or perhaps you have, again, your predefined focus areas and you're aware of certain nonprofits that serve those focus areas. Go talk to them. Just have a conversation. What I would do if I were you is go ask them what kind of data they're already collecting, because they undoubtedly are trying to prove that they're making an impact. And what you're doing is helping give them leverage to increase their impact and hoping to collect data back on it so you can tell what your part in that story was. So they already have these predefined metrics in place. Ask them what they are. And honestly, talk to a few different nonprofits. Like if you talk to one, that's great, but go talk to a couple, because it's chances are they might not all use some like standardized KPI list. Like it's probably highly variable depending upon the specific target population they serve, their specific cause, like where they exist. Like there's a lot of factors in play. So I just ask. And then I would work backwards from there too to be like, okay, here are all the types of data they're collecting. Cool. I know they're already collecting this. I've seen some commonalities in the type of data being collected. I'm going to use that to inform how I build out my request for data from nonprofits that I funded. Because what that does is makes it easier for them. Because it's honestly like a central tenet that I think we all need to get behind, is making things easier for nonprofits is absolutely essential. And as Tyler said, it's important to teach them how to fish so they can service themselves. So there's different elements of this. We're just trying to make their lives better, more sustainable. But with this in mind, like if they're already collecting the data, that means they have the data, which means there's less chance of you not getting that data. You're making it easier for them, which increases your rate of success of pulling in data. And not only that, but like you weren't the one that decided that was a valuable data point. They did. They're the experts. Why not trust them? And I also say with what data you're collecting, I think a common frustration I hear is we already know how much we're funding. We know the geographies we're funding to. We know the cause areas we're serving. And that's all like, I would say pretty table stakes. A lot of our clients and on non-clients that I talk to as well are trying to figure out how to get a little bit deeper and then a little bit deeper than that to figure out what the true impact story is. Like, what is actually happening with these dollars? I know that I gave the Kids in Need Foundation a $200,000 grant. Who benefited? What did they benefit from? How are they measuring that benefit? Also, someone please interrupt me. There's a lot of buzzing outside my window. Can anyone hear that?
No, you're good, Annie. Can't hear a thing.
I love Zoom, but I am going to shut my window, so pardon me. My lovely, gorgeous neighbor is getting their lawn leveled today, so there is power equipment outside my house. Love working from home. Anyway, so carrying on back to this. So I think that with the prior points in mind, you think about your basics and then you just add more. Like you want to be considerate of not overwhelming nonprofits to provide too much data, but I think it's fair to ask them about the outcomes that they are producing, especially if they're known KPI points already and you're making it easy for them. So anyway, let's talk types of data you might want to collect. So as I've outlined, there are the basics: dollars granted, number of products donated, hours of pro bono services, geographies impacted, demographics. Those are all pretty table stakes. They're pretty basic info. I do still think that they're essential, but I think that they're foundational elements that you can then use to add on to. So the deeper measurements I see here, it's highly variable, so I tried to generalize as much as I could, but there's number type measurements you can get beyond just simply number of persons served. You might identify certain subcategories of that. So number of students impacted, number of patients served or patients with increased health outcomes, number of meals provided, that sort of thing. There's a lot of different ways in which you can gather number-based fields. I like them because even though they're a basic, simple field, it's generally easy for the nonprofits to supply because those are easy to collect and easy for them to monitor. A deeper measurement is going to be deltas. You might be able to ask a nonprofit for delta information. You might just want to calculate that on their own. For anyone unfamiliar with the term delta, it simply means a change from one value to another. So what we're looking here is generally looking for any improvements between your base set of data and your after set of data, so your impact data. Most of our clients, what they're doing is they're collecting base data on an initial application. They're collecting after data or comparison data on an impact report, which is something sent out to collect data after you've sent out funding. So these are generally used to show things like, I just gave a few examples, graduation rates. You could have like, I don't know, like population health outcomes for certain areas, reduction in time for people to transition from temporary housing to full-time housing. There's quite a few different ways in which you could look at delta type measures. And then there's going to be another lovely one is sometimes you're like, I don't know, our goal is to make people happy. How do we measure that? How do you measure happiness? No problem. I mean, honestly, like have qualitative value, or sorry, yeah, qualitative values. You can use numeric scales like the classic, how much does this hurt at the doctor's office, where it's like smiley face to super frowny. You could use the numeric values of that. You could use single select values. Like there's different ways to collect qualitative values, but collecting them in an organized way allows you to assign a quantitative value to them. So then you can go and take those soft metrics that are still super valuable and use them. The nice thing about telling an impact story, it doesn't all have to be hard numbers. It just has to show that you're making a difference. Hard numbers are great. We love them. It's just not always something that's available to us. So now that we're here, we've executed our vision portion. So we know our why, our who, and our what. And then we have to do something with that, right? So we love conceptualizing. I'm a big fan. We probably should, put pen to paper and figure out how we're going to execute on that, right? So what I always like to say on this, and this is honestly the CyberGrants Bonterra pitch right here, is whether it's ours or it's another technology suite that's offering these things, build out data collection vehicles. We at CyberGrants call them impact reports. What it is, and I may have already lightly touched on this, but you have your grant application and your internal approval workflow and your payments mechanism. That is all basic. We all know that you're getting applications or even just making contributions to nonprofits. That's step one. It's the everything after that that this is talking about. Impact reports are used to develop questionnaires that can be sent out to different types of organizations or based on different application types automatically on certain set or relative dates. So for example, if I have an event sponsorship grant, I probably want to send a follow-up to understand what was the number of signups, what was the number of actual attendees, what was the breakdowns of types of persons who actually showed up. I might want to know, like, did we actually go through with all of the marketing elements that we'd agreed to? Did we get to provide a logo? Do I have proof of that? There's various elements that I could ask for in a follow-up, and it's highly variable again upon type of program, what type of data is important to you, what type of organizations you're supporting. But at the end of the day, knowing that you have a vehicle where you can standardize your questionnaire so that your reporting reflects compounded values from sending those out to different nonprofits, being able to identify similarities even between disparate programs using similar data points, and then letting technology work for you. Like, a lot of times I'll talk to people who are doing things manually, and there's only so much that people can do, especially because in those cases, it's usually like a one or two person team. Like, we know that it's nice to, we do as much as we can with what we have, but there's not always enough gas in the tank to do this extra. So having a technology in place really helps our users to automate the request for data collection, the processing of data collection, and then the ability to use it in reporting for all of your why reasons that we just went through. So the nice thing about our system too is you can set up due dates, you can set up reminders, you can even set up warnings internally to let you know if they haven't completed an impact report so that you can gently reach out to them personally if you would like to. And then you can decide on an ongoing basis, hey, maybe I need to add a question here. Maybe I need to remove this question because I now find that this data point is no longer helpful or a good indicator of impact. It's all flexible, and that's the nice thing. You can do all the hard work to lay your foundation the first time and then just make minor tweaks going forward. It's like building a house and then painting a room. Building the house was the hard part. Painting the room, maybe that's not everyone's favorite, but it's like a relatively minor ask. So here's a sample impact report. Obviously, this is super light. All of our clients, my words are not with me today. I'm on decaf, perhaps that's the issue. But within impact reports, you can ask whatever questions you want. If you haven't heard our yield cyber grants pitch, we have 23 different field types you can utilize. So the method with which you collect data, there's a lot of options. I'd say, like, I have a lot of number values reflected here. You can do number values, you can do percent values, monetary values, location based. There's quite a few different options, single select drop-down lists. So quite a lot going on there, but it's highly flexible. And the whole goal with that is to make sure you can ask what you want to ask in the format you want to ask it in so that it translates well to reporting. So with that in mind, the next thing you would do after you build your questionnaire and start collecting data is you need something to do with that data, right? So I think, like, I've talked with folks that just have like a gigantic master spreadsheet and, that works until it doesn't. But within our tool, we have a feature called Insights that allows you to build evergreen dashboards that can comprise multiple reports and data points, and then assign a visual to each of those. So this can be a helpful tool because what you're doing is you're saying, here's my why. This is why I'm doing this. And then the what about, like, what that report needs to look like. What kind of visuals will help me drive home what the data is telling us. And then you can assign those things, and then the data will automatically apply to those calculations and visuals that you've assigned to that dashboard. So this is an essential part of processes because you might know that the data is relevant. The nonprofits might know that the data is relevant, but not all of the people downstream will understand why it's important. So I think establishing visuals that succinctly explain that is really helpful for you for all of the whys that you're trying to achieve, including making a case to business leadership about why you should have additional funding. Hey guys, look at this great impact we're driving in X, Y, and Z communities with the dollars you've allocated to us to use for corporate grant funding. If we had XYZ more, we could double this. We could invest in capacity building. Who knows, you know? So anyway, with here, what you would do with your dashboards is understand what you're going to do with your raw data. Do you need to insert the calculations to create the delta values? Are you going to showcase your changes over time? Breakdowns by certain criteria, typically cause or focus areas, the most common one I see, but I also see demographic breakdowns, location breakdowns. For our life sciences clients, I see therapeutic area breakdowns. Like there's quite a lot of variation to this. And then you build out your reports to address your various use cases. And then you just tweak them as needed. And then they're available to you as you're trying to get answers to questions you have, as you're trying to understand whether or not you are going to continue funding an organization, a certain type of cause, a demographic or geographic location, or if you're just trying to share a story. So what I'm going to do now is just walk you through a couple of these dashboards. It's, again, these are the ones that I have available. All of our clients use this tool in a slightly different way because everyone's whys are a little bit different and everyone's whats are a little bit different. So I'll go ahead and showcase this though. So going into the tool over here, we'll get rid of that. Here's a dashboard that I built recently. If you love recorded videos, I went through this one in a little more depth on a recorded video that will be on our website as well. So if you like my voice and my face, I will also be talking about this on another piece of content. So over here in this personal dashboard, I made this grant impact metrics overview. What I did here is a little bit different than a traditional use, perhaps. So I have our dollar values, our number of individuals impact, number of grants we contributed toward, number of organizations supported, and number of books donated. I also have some narratives. So I can assign a narrative, a text field in here where I can pull information out from narrative information I've collected. This one highlights a partner that we have. This one over here highlights feedback we got from a nonprofit about our investment in that partner's goals from one of their end beneficiaries. I then have breakdowns by our focus areas, including the option, honestly, to have undefined or undesignated. That's an option too. You don't need to. I do in my case. By cause code. So we layer in data from the IRS, this being one of the areas. And then I have breakdowns approved grant amount by program. So I have my various grant programs. By market we serve. I have this listed as metropolitan statistical area. All of our clients define them differently. This is mostly for the benefit of our banking clients who are required to indicate MSA investment. And then I have breakdown by ethnicity, percent low to moderate income persons served, contributions by census income level of the organization address, and more. So I have a lot of different information here. I also have heat mapping turned on to show where our funds are being distributed to. This is a really powerful image that's really easy to understand. And with these two, you can go on different levels by country, by state, by county, by metropolitan statistical area, by zip code. It depends, again, on your area of impact. Some of our clients only work in the San Antonio, Texas metro. Some of our clients are global. It just depends. So another thing to point out with these dashboards, I built this one time. It doesn't mean I'm not going to tweak it. That's one of the nice things about our tool. You can. If you're adding new data points, cool. The other nice thing about it, it updates automatically. As new data is inserted into the fields you already have available on this dashboard, it'll automatically populate. I have mine automatically defaulted to showing me data from the last 365 days. If I wanted to change that, I could set it to the last 7 days. I could set it to the last 5 years. There's a lot of different things I could look at. Looking at things for the last 5 years is, probably better for your change over time type dashboards if you're making those. This is more of a snapshot for a certain time period. But there's a lot of flexibility. And with each of these dashboards too, you can filter between whatever values you want as long as they're data fields you're collecting. So I could go ahead and filter this by our focus area or by a market we serve or by and this is IRS COS code. I could even look at our impact with a specific organization over a longer period of time. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you can use just one dashboard. And then I also have over here, I'm showing this one. It is a pharmaceuticals dashboard. So, probably not for everyone here, but what I'm trying to get across here is that you can show different data points. So I can show breakdown internally of all of our dispositions. I can show this is our change over time data of submitted amounts versus approved amounts. I can show grant amount by program over month. So there's various indicators I can use. I can also just look at submitted grants. You don't have to look at approvals. Sometimes looking at your rejection data is just as important as looking at your approval data because it tells you ways that you can tweak your programs to maximize the time you can allocate to things that provide value moving forward. So anyway, I digress. That was a quick look into factors to consider as you are building out your impact strategy in a way that allows you to deeply consider how you might collect data, how you can make that easier for yourself, what kinds of data you want to collect, and then ultimately what you're hoping to accomplish with that data. So I think that's about all I got. Thanks, everyone. Any remarks, Ashley?
Awesome job, Annie. Thank you so much, Tyler. Thank you so much for walking folks through this, and Annie giving folks a look into the tool. Very much appreciated. I know that folks on the line will appreciate kind of the visualization. And leading into my next question for everyone here, if you are interested in taking even a deeper look into that tool and our grant management tool in general, please feel free to fill out this poll I'll be launching. We're happy to have one of our colleagues reach out to you, like I mentioned earlier, initiate those conversations, answer any questions, and really be able to showcase the tool specific to your organization and what you all might need. But while folks are filling that out, want to give folks a couple minutes here since we have some extra time. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop those into the chat or Q&A. I'm well versed and well equipped to do the whole awkward silence thing and wait for folks to drop in their questions for a couple. So if you do have those, please feel free to drop them in. And thank you all for the time this afternoon, Annie and Tyler. Thanks for going through everything with us.
I guess while we're waiting for questions to pop in, I personally really enjoyed learning more about capacity building because that isn't something that in my area I get to learn or discuss very often, but I think it's really cool.
I am glad. Yay. I learned too. Trust me, I'm not typically a lot in that world. So I think we both got some education today. I love it.
Yeah, pretty fun. Yeah, I mean, I think it's so funny, like even in CSR, like I know that what I touch on a day-to-day basis and get to talk about is just a small piece of the greater impact puzzle of like what everyone is trying to collectively accomplish to do good. So always cool to see other sides of it. All right.
Love that. Both of us, all of us were learning. The attendees, the speakers, everyone's learning. I love it. But with that, folks, it doesn't look like anyone has any questions, which I think is a testament to y'all's great presentation. Didn't leave any room for questions. You answered everything they could ever ask. But if you do think of a question afterwards, folks, please feel free to reach out to us. Happy to have those conversations and answer any questions. But with that, we want to thank you for your time and your attention this afternoon. It's very much appreciated. Annie and Tyler, thank you again. And we definitely hope to see you all at our next session, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much, everyone.